So my first impression of India, it was hot. It was the plane ride was a long, long plane ride. I think it's 30 something hours traveling, and whether you're in an airport or in a plane. Um, yeah, I remember all of us going and getting breakfast with the assistants that first day, and we all loved the breakfast. And I think a few of us, almost got hit by motorcycles or something crossing the street. We were so confused about how to do anything, and luckily cars in India are going about 20 miles an hour max. But I remember the food was awesome. We all loved the food right away. You couldn't stop in India. From day one to the last day, I could not stop looking outside of the window. I think if we were driving in a car, which was very rare, or if we're on a bus, which was very common, I could not stop looking outside and just watching what was going on outside. Like, it was just, there's always something interesting going on the street. And so that was something that we noticed right off the bat. Trying to think of other things that we noticed. I mean, there's so much to notice. My first day was a really good day. That's what I remember. It was exciting. We were all really excited to be there. We were really tired, but it didn't matter. And but then when we got separated to our different areas, we had to leave each other. Each area is pretty much a plane ride away. So we all got on different planes, all 8 of us or 7 of us, I can't remember, that went to India at the same time. And that first day was a real shock to me, just how much is going on in India. And it's just everything all the time in India. It's like, it is the heat, it's up in your face. It's the noises, the smells, the views. It's just up in your face, and kind of I guess you could say a shock. I don't know how else to call it, but India is really actually a very diverse place, and it's unique from other countries in that in India, they have their own, and you wouldn't think this would make a difference, but they have their own movie industry that's huge, a number of movie industries, the music. So things actually in India, there are definitely, you see Coca-Cola products, you see McDonald's there, and you see American things. But I think in India, they have been able to retain their culture and their country's identity better than most, because of the media is Indian media, and they're watching Indian movies and listening to Indian music more so than maybe other countries would. And so it's for that reason many people have said that it's hard to find a country that's more different than America than India is, just because they are America. We think in American terms, and we maybe can be seen as ethnocentric, I guess. But in India, it's a little bit of the same way, because they're not as exposed to other cultures as outside of India as maybe other countries are. And it's very diverse. Every new area you go to, it's a new culture in a sense, because they have a new language. The people can even look a little bit different. The script can be different. The script that they're using to write can be different. And their food changes from state to state more so than a food would change. Food changes from state to state in America. And so for that reason, it's never boring. And people like to say that all food in India is spicy. I would say that most of it is if you're in the South. But there's definitely non-spicy food as well. The best food, in my opinion, is in the South. The North has good. So they split like this. In the South, there are more Christian people. And so because there's more Christian people, there's more meat that they eat. And in the North, it's more Hindu. And I don't have the facts to back that up, but this is what they say. It's more Hindu, and so because of that, there's more vegetarian, and so there's more veg that's what they call it, veg meals that they eat. And so in the South, I feel like you could probably get a little bit better meat because that's what they're more practiced with, and they're better at the chicken masala and chicken tikka masala. And then in the North, you might find better paneer or whatever else you might find that's vegetarian. Also in the South, it's a lot of rice, and in the North, so the rice is like their base, and in the North they have a bread base, which is like naan and dosas and things like that. And so that's what they eat their curries with in the South. They eat it with rice, and in the North they eat it with the breads. These other interesting facts. India is that I guess, there's everything is different in India. They do everything differently. It seems like transportation is always interesting. Trains are packed. Buses are extremely packed. Just getting on a bus. Just getting on a bus is different than you would in America. Sometimes it doesn't even stop at the bus stop. It kind of slowly rolls by, and you're expected to run up next to it and jump in. Like, we're not really going to stop for you guys. And then there's people getting out at the same time. So people are jumping out and jumping in at the same time, and the bus has never stopped. It's just gone to 2 or 3, 4 miles an hour. And sometimes we would just run into the street and we see our bus that we needed, and we would run into the street. I remember running past motorcycles and things going 10 miles an hour, I don't know, in the traffic as the bus is going, and we jump into the bus. Even things as simple as getting on a bus is going to be different in India, but that's what makes it fun. Let's see. It's also, I think, India, that people will be surprised the contrast India has is so. You will see the nicest building maybe in the entire world is so clean and sleek looking, and then right next to that will be a tent village. People, some of the richest people in the world live in India, and people walking into these buildings with nice business suits, driving nice cars, and then at the same time, you're surrounded by there's a lot of beggars in India. There's a lot of beggars. You'll never go anywhere without running into people who are asking for money. But so the contrast can really get you. It's never boring. In Bangalore, it's called the AC city. It is definitely cooler. It's one of the few cities that missionaries live without AC, actually, ironically. But it's because it's not as hot. It's you might even see people wearing a jacket every once in a while, even though for missionaries coming from Utah, this definitely doesn't seem necessary. It is a nice city. It's got a lot of trees, and it's also called Silicon Valley of India. A lot of tech companies, a lot of call centers, a lot of English. Is one of the cities that you'd go to, and I was surprised because I had been there in India for more than a year, and when I would get on the bus, I would hear other Indians talking to each other in English, which was a shock to me. I'd never really heard that in other places, but they were talking English to each other. You see more Americanized things there. You see more American clothing. It's also the headquarters of the mission. It's where the mission president stays and the mission home is. I don't think there's a stake there right now, but it might be the next area to grow from. But Chennai is on the coast, and I believe it was hit by the tsunami in 2000 or 2002. I cannot remember when that was. It also has a very good, strong membership of the church. It's hotter, I would say, in Chennai. It's definitely more humid, and the food is slightly different. In Chennai, they speak Tamil, and they're very proud about their Tamilian language and their Tamilian background. And so it's one of the few areas of the country that, at least while I was there, did not accept Hindi as the national language, which is technically a national language. Any city you go to, people will be speaking Hindi. Chennai might have been, you'll find the least Hindi speakers there because they're so proud about their Tamil. So they'll speak a lot of Tamil and they'll speak a lot of English. Tamilians are also usually a little bit darker and darker skinned and maybe slightly taller, but I don't know if that's just my perception. So for Hyderabad, it feels more deserty and it has a lot more of a Muslim influence. Maybe that's why the name is Hyderabad. It's kind of like other Muslim city names end with bad for some reason. And so a lot of Muslim influence. It's known as the best food in India. That's what most people would say, best food in India. And I probably would agree. It's my favorite place to eat is Hyderabad. Hyderabad is one of the strongest areas, if not the strongest area of the mission in terms of LDS membership. There's a stake there now, I believe. It wasn't a stake when I was there, but it was very strong. Some of the longest members are from lasting members are from Hyderabad. The other city that I did go to but never served in was Vishakhapatnam. It's called Vizag, and that's by the coast. It is somewhat near Hyderabad. It's the smallest big city, I believe, out of all those. Maybe it's comparable size to Bangalore, but Vizag, they speak Telugu there like they do in Hyderabad, and it's a really beautiful city. It's more hilly, and like I said, it's near the coast. The people are known as some of the nicest in India. I think is the happiest and nicest around is the general consensus among the missionaries, but maybe that's all I should say about that. But it's a great city. I don't know much else about it because I didn't live there very long, or at all. I didn't live there at all. Just visited. As for certain things I admire in the Indians, I think they are just so. There's just so many happy Indians, and they're so. They just love. They're very touchy. They'll hold on to you. They'll put your arm around you, and they'll talk real close, real up in your face, and they're just so interested in you and in everything, and they love hearing about just other parts of the world, and they're very humble in that way, and they love life. And another thing I admire is they have great food. They have great sense that they know exactly. They make fun of Americans. They say, "Oh, you have all this money and you're eating bread." It's like we don't. We have all this. We eat well, and you do not. And I would kind of agree with them for the most part. Although I know we don't just eat bread. I think many of them believe that we pick up a loaf of bread and start chewing on it for dinner, and that's what they have in mind. It's just there's so many people in India that are have leprosy, or that have suffered from some kind of physical malady, or are exceedingly poor, and you'll see it is unending. You'll see it everywhere you go. You see it at the bus station. You'll see someone without legs begging. It's something that you never get used to completely, but you have to be strong about if you're going to India, because it can be overwhelming, and you'll find that people. I remember times when I've walked through and just got mobbed by beggars, just surrounded. My shirt would be covered in handprints, and I had my pen stolen out of my pocket, which was not that bad at all, and that was very rare. Maybe one time that happened, but still, the fact that it happened at all should indicate that there's a lot of people that are very needy in India, and especially if you're living the way a missionary does, which means you don't have your own driver, you're going and you're using the bus stations just like everybody else, and you're walking the streets. Maybe you can't even afford to use the auto rickshaws that month because you used up too much money. You're going to be encountering that when a American businessman living in Bangalore would not, and you're living next to them. You live in nice areas, but you don't live in a high-rise that an executive for Walmart or something might live in. So you're down there and you see it, and as a missionary it can be kind of eye-opening and difficult, and I think by the end you learn to deal with it, but it's something that I think as missionaries we're told I don't want to like give a rule, but we weren't to give to beggars as well, and that can be kind of hard. Although I will say I've bought a few things of food and had them pretty much taken out of my hand, and I willingly, okay, you can have that. You can have my ice cream cone. A little kid took my ice cream cone probably every day for a month at the same bus day. He's like, I shouldn't be upset about this, but I really wanted that ice cream cone today. It's so hot. Oh, okay, you're back. There you go. Here's my ice cream. But anyway, India is incredible in that you'll, especially for mission work, because you look at a map of India, and it will be covered in cities. And if you look at a map, specifically the ones that show population size per city, which has a different size dot, or maybe different colored dot for the city, indicating less than 1 million, more than 1 million, more than 5 million, more than 10 million. And it's incredible. We've heard of the city, like we've heard of New Delhi, we've heard of Calcutta before, we may have heard of Madras or Chennai. Most of the time, though, we haven't heard of many of the other cities, and it's incredible. Or Bombay, of course, which is also called Mumbai. It's officially called Mumbai now. But you look across the whole country, and it's filled with cities you've never heard of, with 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million people. The whole country, there's so many people, and we have missionaries in 5, 6, 7, 8 cities. I don't know, and it's just amazing that no missionary has ever been to the city of 10 million people, and no missionary has ever been to the city of 5 million people. And the way that it's just. Like China, it's just an incredible place to be a part of at the beginning, because there's just so much good that can be done, and that's important. And I think it was exciting to all of us. We all wanted to open up a new area, and we knew that we could. I think they're recently opening up a new area, Vijayawada, which was a place that we all wanted to open up. I hope I get to open up Vijayawada. One day that will be me, and of course it never happened. Or Bombay, I don't know if there's any missionaries that are in Bombay or Mumbai. I mean, it's a huge city. Never had any missionaries. Imagine the potential that's there. There's actually a lot of Christians, and a lot of Christians in India. I don't know if the statistical reports that you see are completely accurate, actually. They say that less than 1% sometimes, and some that I've seen. I saw a lot of churches, especially in the South. There are a lot of churches, a lot of Pentecostal churches, especially a lot of Catholic churches. There's also, of course, most people are Hindu, though. Most people are Hindu, and there's a fairly large amount of Muslim people. Muslim groups usually live in one part of the city. You'll see them, I mean, everyone mixes everywhere, but there's usually a Muslim part of town, and that's a fun part of town because you get beef there. People say you can never get beef in India. That's not true. There's pretty good beef and kebabs in the Muslim part of town. The religions really add to the environment, not only visually, because you see so many people go, well, I'll just go one by one. So visually, you'll see a lot of temples in India. There's a number of mosques. Mosques are always really beautiful and big, but a lot of Hindu temples, and very brightly colored most of the time, or at least the gods that they have will be usually on the walls or on the domes of their temple, paintings of gods and things like that. And then you'll see a lot of people going by with what's called a bindi or a buttu in Telugu, and or at least I think it's Telugu. And so it's a colored dot, or a color, or maybe more than a colored dot. Maybe it's a 3 lines of white, or anyway. Sometimes you'll even see people dressed up as gods, Hindu gods, going around. I actually never really learned what that was about, but you'll see a number of people dressed in completely blue paint, wearing like clothes like a Hindu god, Krishna, for some reason. And so anyway, what I'm saying though is you can actually see what religion people are mostly by looking at them. You can tell what a Muslim person looks like. You see him and you say, okay, he's wearing his traditional Muslim outfit. This person's wearing has a bindi, so he's probably Hindu. Usually has bracelets that have gods like Ganesh and Krishna on them, so you can kind of see. Or a lot of rings that Hindus I've noticed seem to be wearing, and a lot of the Muslim people, they have it's red beards that have been dyed. Red beards, sometimes red hair, but I saw a lot of red beards for some reason. Maybe that was a fad, 2006 fad or 2007 fad. But and then the Sikhs, you can tell who a Sikh is because they have a certain kind of headdress. Young Sikhs, I don't know if they haven't been married yet, but they wear a kind of head, I don't know what you call it, but it's like just a cloth that's wrapped around the head, and it has a ball, which I think has a knot of hair inside ball, and then a Sikh's turban is obviously well known, and very like well groomed beards. They always have well groomed beards as Sikhs, so that's, you know who a Sikh is. And then the Christians, you can tell that they just are lacking all of those things. Like, oh, might be a Christian. Sometimes they'll wear a cross, and so you can almost see everyone's religion on their faces, as they walk around. As you walk up to their house, you can tell, oh, this is a Christian house, this is a Hindu house, this is a Muslim house. It's very apparent, at least most of the time. Sometimes you get surprised, but most of the time you can tell exactly what religion they are, and it's all on their sleeve. And I think it's a good thing. No one's afraid of expressing their beliefs, and it's a very religious country. It's supposed to be one of the most religious countries in the world. From what I was told, Poland, America, and India were the most religious countries in the world, I guess. And I was proud of that. But as for the other religion, no, you hear it. You hear the religions, except for you don't hear many churches. Maybe you hear church bells at times, but you'll hear, as you walk down the street, you'll hear a Brahmin priest praying, or I'm not sure exactly. You'll hear over a loudspeaker some kind of Sanskrit prayer or chant or something like that going on at the temple. And then at certain times of the day, you'll hear the mosque, and you'll hear for prayer time. Oftentimes, it's very early. It'll wake you up early in the morning, 5 or 6 in the morning, earlier than you want. But so that was always interesting. So anyways, that's for religion. The script for Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, and Hindi, which are the most common that missionaries run into, are all different, and they all come from Sanskrit, I believe. And I could be wrong about Tamil. Tamil is a little bit, it might have a different origin, but it all comes from an ancient language called Sanskrit, which is like the Greek or the Latin of Indian languages, where that's the original. And that's what the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, I don't know if I said that right, but the scripture that is all written in that. And so that's what the Brahmin priests, when you'll hear chanting, there's always chanting going on near the temple, and sometimes it's over a loudspeaker, and you'll hear it, and usually that's in Sanskrit. At least that's what I was told. Not that I know Sanskrit, but Tamil is, in all the languages, they have strong consonants, and I think that knowing that helps you to be able to understand their accents in English, because to know that they really pronunciate their consonants, then it helps you understand why they say things a certain way, and how you should say something a certain way if someone doesn't understand English. For instance, if we would want to talk to a taxi driver, tell him to go left, we would say lefta. To him, it just sounds like we're saying left, like really well. But to us, it sounds like we're saying two different words, left, right, left, right, and that helped him know, oh, right, left. Anyway, so as for phrases though, like Tamil, they always ask you if you've eaten your dinner, and it's like just a polite way of kind of greeting you. In Tamil, or if you finished your dinner, I guess is more better translation, but that was saptingla. Saptingla, S-A-P, tingla, anyway. So that was, have you eaten yet? Have you finished eating? Namaste, namaskaram, those are kind of the greetings, and they are also like the goodbyes. I think they're about the same. I don't know if namaste. I know namaste is Hindi. Namaskaram is used in the South more, but I don't know which namaskaram, if it goes with Kannada or Telugu or Tamil. As for like scolding phrases, they always say, it's just very playful. It's like, I'm gonna hit you with my flip-flop, is basically what they're saying. But they call flip-flops chappals. All Indians, all the missionaries called, we never said really flip-flops. We picked up that word and we'd call our flip-flops chappals too. So for a scolding phrase, you would say, chappal tisti testara, something like that. It's been years, and that means I'm going to hit you with my chapel. And man, you could get anybody to laugh if you told them that, because it's just like a kind of a playful, silly banter that they have. I'm trying to think of other things. I would always say, whenever my companions would ask me, my Indian companions would ask me a question, I would say "Naku telidu," which means I don't know, and then they would always come back and say, "Nik telida," like, what do you know? Like, because I would say that so often. "Naku telidu," I don't know. That's Telugu. So those are the real phrases that I learned, and that's about it that I know. I didn't learn any of the languages because it's encouraged that you speak in English and that you find people that are English speakers. So in church, they'll speak English, and the talks will be in English, and the lessons will be in English, with the exception of one small branch that President Hinckley authorized to speak in Tamil a long time ago. And none of the missionaries ever go to that branch. And so pretty much you deal in all English for now. I don't know how soon that will change. As for picking up languages, we all kind of picked up a little bit of the language. I tried to learn the script. I don't know why. So I could read a little bit of Tamil while I was there. I could understand a little bit of Tamil and Telugu, and that's most likely people learn and understand those. If you're in the North Mission, obviously you're around Hindi, so you might pick up on Hindi and the Hindi script. Other than that, I used very little of the language. The purpose of me learning any Tamil, Telugu, or Hindi, or Kannada is another language that they speak in Bangalore, was just to make people laugh. It's a really good way. If you learn a few of their words, like a few phrases, like "Did you eat your dinner?" which is they always say that. I always ask that. Or some of their scolding phrases is what they call them. Then you can really get the members to laugh real hard. So as Americans, we would try and learn those. English is very common in India. I think they consider it one of their national languages, and most people in India speak 3 or 4 languages, actually, English being one of them. Most, actually, I shouldn't say most. I would say most people of a certain class that live in the cities. If you go into the villages, you'll find very little English speakers, but there's a fairly good amount of people that speak English. That being said, if there were to change and to say that the missionaries could now speak Telugu or Hindi or Tamil, it'd be incredible. We considered it a few times, just a what if as missionaries, and it'd be incredible the amount of people you'd begin to teach, because you do have to be selective in the people that you teach, because you're looking for English speakers, since obviously that's the only way you can communicate with them. So I don't know the exact numbers, but there's a good amount of people that speak English, but it'd be incredible to be able to speak to them in their own languages, because there's a lot of people there in India. For speaking in English, they have a heavy influence of the British influence is strong in India, and so they'll say things like lorry for a truck. I don't know if I ran into a whole lot of other things. They say proper a lot, and from people I know who are British, they also say proper. So it's like you have to do this in a proper way, and so that's how they use that kind of vernacular more. The emphasis is on different syllables for them. For instance, for a long time, I had no idea what people were saying when they said "devil up." I hear it a lot in church, actually, over the pulpit. It's like, we need to devil up. We need to devil up. And and I didn't know. I was like, we need to devil up? That seems not like a good idea. And then I figured out it's develop. Devil up. Anyway, so there's things like that. Proper is very common. Devil up. I heard that all the time. One thing they say it a lot is just means, like MEANS, means, and that means what does it mean? Or it's just everyone says it. It became almost like an inside joke. We'd all, as missionaries, we'd use your hand like this, and that means you're asking a question. You say means, and obviously they'd know what you're talking about. But that's another thing I should mention is hand motions are actually very helpful. This means you're asking a question, and sometimes you could ask a question, and if you don't do that, no one will. They'll just stare at you and nod and not realize that you're asking them a question, even though it was clearly a question. So you do this. They have a different way of explaining how much something is just with their hands, and this is important to know because you speak to a lot of people that don't know good English well. So this means a little bit, just showing a little bit of your finger. This means a lot. It shows your full arm. This means you have to go to the bathroom, which you see a lot. Someone will leave the room and they'll signify where they're going. And so I guess so we all know. I'm trying to think of. There's a few other. Obviously, the head bobble is a part of the language. It's a communication tool, and it's saying like I understand or okay or I agree with you, and so all the missionaries you learn that you head bobble a lot, and even as you talk. It's almost like a way that are we all on the same page right now, and head bobbling, and the whole room will be head bobbling, and including the missionaries, and so that means we're all hopefully on the same page right now. So and other than that, do realize I got there and I thought, okay, this is an English speaking mission, I'll be okay. And about a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks before I really grasped the English language of India, because it was a little bit difficult I didn't understand most of the things that were going on for the first week, even though it was an English speaking mission. So I'd be aware of that. The Indian accent, let's see what they would say. Yeah, a lot of little kids will come to you. How are you? How are you? Let's see. I want to try and think of a typical phrase that they would tell us, or they would say. What is your name? Like, what is your name would be, you hear that all the time, little kids, what is your name? What is your name? Another phrase, just demonstrate some accents, like, hello brother, how are you? You finished your dinner yet? Things like that. I'm trying to, I know that the Book of Mormon is a true book in this whole world, and things like, just a little bit interesting phrases there, things like that. Gosh, I'm trying to think of others. Jackson brother. For some reason, they'll call us not elder. Or they'll call you brother, but they say your name after it. So the Jackson brother instead of brother Jackson. Jackson brother, how are you? Have you had your dinner yet, brother? Anyway, so this is one of the things that they would say. They would scold us as missionaries. It's like a playful way of, but it sounds mean. But it's like almost like an endearing. Like if someone's talking to you in this way, then that means they like you. They like being around you. It's like, and this is what I get all the time. Is something like, "Hey, what you are thinking, junk fellow? I'm going to take off one of my chapels. I'll beat you on the head with that one. It's definitely, you are so dumb." Things like that. Are you crap fellow? Are you junk fellow? What you are thinking, missionary? You're not respecting your tag. You are just one junk missionary. And it was like, oh, why are they? They're always riding on me. And it was really just like, those are my best friends though. They're like, their kids were 20-something years old, and they'd come up to me at church, they'd put my arm around me, and they'd like try and wrestle me and stuff like that. And really, it was just like we're all playing around. So I thought I'd say that because I'm proud of my Indian accent, or at least I used to be, and that was a pretty good depiction of what they say, their phrases and their accent, I thought. So we'll see if my companions, if they saw that, would agree. More about travel. Travel is interesting in India, as I already mentioned, but travel, like in Hyderabad especially, the buses never really stop. Well, they do. There's times when they definitely stop, but sometimes they just don't. And a lot of times it's when they're really, really full. And you'll be waiting at a bus station with a lot of other people, and a bus will roll through. It's your number bus, and it's packed already. People are hanging off at the side of the bus. Not the side. They're not as clinging onto the side, but more like in the two areas where there's doors. You'll see it's so crowded inside that people are outside the bus and holding on to the inside of the door frame. And so they'll kind of roll through, and you got to figure out this is your bus, and it's the last chance you're going to get a bus for the next 20 minutes maybe, or 15, I don't know. And so you kind of run next to it as it's rolling, and you're eyeing it and seeing where can you stick your hand in and where can you put your foot. And if you ever get on there, you put your hand on a bar, and you're usually smashed up against somebody, and they're smashed up. You're all smashed into this bus door, and you got one toe in the door, and you just lift up the other foot, and the bus goes away, and that's called footboarding. And footboarding can be dangerous, so you don't want to do it if you don't have to. But as missionaries, we thought it was really fun. Footboarding. I don't know if they call it that or if the missionaries call it that, but so that's a common thing. The bus is usually tipped and going along at an angle because it's just so full in there and hot. Sometimes the buses will stop, and I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's because people didn't pay on the bus, and the person's trying to go around trying to get everyone to pay. And I don't know, it feels like 2,000 people in a bus, and of course it's not really that amount. It feels so many people, and it's stuck, and there's no air moving through it, and it's hot, and it is hard. Hopefully that doesn't happen too often anymore, but another common way of getting around is with rickshaws, auto rickshaws. We just call them autos. And there's pretty much like a scooter that has some attachments to it. It's like a scooter engine. The person's not using a steering wheel in there. It's just scooter handlebars or motorcycle handlebars. But it's almost like, I guess it's like a three-wheeler it's usually yellow and maybe black. And there's like a bench behind the guy's seat in the front. And so you get 2 people in there, 3 people. But, you could see 6 people going through and hanging outside the auto. And I think we've had 4 or 5 missionaries, 6 missionaries stuck into one auto before. And for that, you kind of, depending on the city, you pay in different amounts for different, maybe they have what's called a meter. All of them will have a meter. Some of them just don't go by the meter. They don't turn it on, which the meter calculates how far you're going and how much you should pay. Most of the time what happens though is auto will roll up to you, especially if you're American. A few of them will roll up to you and start just yelling prices, like where do you need to go? And you tell them, and then they'll offer a price. Okay, 100 rupees, which is usually 4 or 5 times what an Indian would pay. 100 rupees, 200 rupees. And then we would say, oh, no, we live here, brother. We know the price. It's 15 rupees or 20 rupees or whatever it is. And so you kind of haggle over travel prices. And then there's a few places where you do ride bikes. And bike riding can be fun because this is a smaller town that missionaries will ride bikes, but they are not tiny towns, so there's still traffic, there's still things going on, so you're riding your bike next, and then you're trying to go past the guy with the cart being pulled by a bull or an ox, and then there's a bus on your right side, and you got to watch out and be careful, but as far as I know, everyone's pretty safe on bikes, and it's really fun. Good way to get exercise as always. Trains are also common, although missionaries don't ride on trains unless it's for transfers. And planes, there's a lot of airports actually, and the assistants ended up getting frequent flyer miles, just because they're flying twice a week. The president is flying all over the country just to get to his areas. And most of the time when you have a transfer, you're getting on a plane. For one of my transfers, it was a bus out of the village, Kakinada, that I was in, bus to Rajahmundry. I think from Rajahmundry, I might have gotten a train to Hyderabad, and then from Hyderabad a flight to Bangalore, and that's how I made my transfer. And I was alone actually for a lot of it. I can't remember all the details about that though. I remember one time, walking down the street and meeting a guy named Sagar, and we just mentioned who we were and asked him if we could talk to him about the church, and he said, yeah, come by my house. I gave us his phone number and address and told us to come by at a different day, and we came by and we taught him and his brother, Sagar and Sridhar, and they were the two English speakers in the home. His parents, they lived with their parents. They were both about 20-something, 22 maybe, pretty close in age, and they were great. And Sridhar especially, his brother, was just ready for the gospel, and we loved teaching him. And he came to church his first week, and I don't know if we were able to have a very long lesson with him. It was something that quick. We wanted to keep our appointments, and keep our word and coming by, but I don't know if we had a complete lesson with them even. But we invited them both to church, and Sridhar came, and at church they said in the new member meeting, or the gospel doctrine class, which I feel like most everyone goes to since most everyone's a new member, they challenged everyone to memorize the family proclamation. And if I remember right, once again, we weren't able to really meet up with Sridhar during the next week. Maybe one time. He was just so self-sufficient. We were busy, and his times didn't work with ours, and we would come over, maybe teach a little bit more, and he would soak it up. And the next week he came, he was the only one that had memorized the family proclamation. He got up and he recited the whole family proclamation on his second week at church, and he was great, and really a miracle for us as missionaries, because you just saw the hand of the Lord working with him, because we really, even if we hardly had the time to even help him, all he needed was just he just needed someone to point him where to go, a church to go to, and he was ready. And he would get out his notebook before every lesson, open it up, and I'd see written on the inside cover was Sridhar, member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he was 2 or 3 weeks from being baptized yet. I don't think we've even talked to him at that point. At that point, we weren't committing people to baptism very early. We changed that later on in the mission, but at that point, we hadn't even committed him to baptism. He was so ready, and he was great to work with. And maybe he sees us. He eventually served a mission maybe a year or two after I left, and became a great missionary, great assistant, and is going to be really great in the church in Hyderabad. The word conversion or converted is a buzzword. You want to kind of avoid that, because if people, in fact, people will see us as missionaries and they'll say, you're converting. And to us, it's almost like, well, yeah, it's a good thing, or we aspire to be converted to the Lord. But as Indians see it, it's almost like a different meaning, and I think it has a historical. There's been some issues with maybe Christian churches paying people to stop being Hindu and to come to church now, and giving them saris, which is a kind of Indian woman clothing, the saris, and they must be somewhat expensive. So they're giving out saris, food, money, and that's called converting. And so, as for missionary safety, that's the big thing. There'd be groups, usually they're political groups that are very, they're tied to fundamentalist religious groups. And so they have concerns about Christian churches, especially missionaries. And so I remember one time, like you realize that they have you learn their symbols pretty quick, and I think the most obvious one was the color orange. There's a lot of orange in a certain political party, and they would put lotus flower. I think it was an orange lotus flower, if I remember right, and that was a kind of a symbol that this was a area that was dominated by this political party, or this was a building for their headquarters in that locality. And I remember one time walking by a house, and I thought it was just a bunch of houses, and I guess one of them was actually an office, and there was a bunch of men standing outside of this one story, very small little place. And it was me and an American companion, and we talked to everybody. And so there's these men outside this door, and I think someone called me inside. I kind of stepped into the door to see who it was and to say hi, and I kind of, it's typical way, just, hey, how are you doing? My name is Ella Jackson. And there's this man sitting at this desk, and he had these two men behind him, a number of men along the walls. There were men outside, and I didn't pick up on anything. I was like, oh, what an interesting situation. And I kind of was like, come on in. He just wanted to talk to us. And I was like, okay. So I took a few steps in, and my companion grabbed me by the shoulder, and all he did was point. He pointed at the door. And I turned around and I saw the door had a picture of a lotus flower, orange lotus flower, or something like that. Some symbol that I recognized, and I thought, oh. And I knew immediately what he was saying, and I looked around the room and realized what the situation was I was about to get myself into. It was most likely I was going to go in, they were going to close the door and not let us out unless and what they would do is they'd make missionaries, and it happened to a few of the missionaries, sign documents saying I was converting. I was paying people to do certain thing, and then they'd throw you in jail because they had the power to do that. And so that happened to a few missionaries. It never happened to me, and it probably would have happened to us had it not been for my companion being more aware. And I just politely said, oh, we have to go. See ya. Oh, where are you going? You should come and sit and talk with us. And it wasn't worth it. Maybe he really was interested, but it really wasn't worth it. So congrats on getting your call to India. I'm sure you're getting a lot of people that are either excited for you or very nervous for you. I'm both. I'd be excited and nervous because it's a whole new world. But just know that the people in India are great. My advice would be get to know the members very well. They are your number one tool, and along with your companions, will be your best friends. I had many people in India that I considered. I was so sad to leave because they were like family by the time I was leaving, and I was very sad about that. And they're a real strength to you, the members and even the investigators that you'll teach, the perpetual investigators. They can be great friends and almost like family. If I was going on my mission to India in the next few months, I would really gain a stronger testimony of the Book of Mormon, and I would read and I would pray as hard as I could that I could better understand it and better be able to explain it to people, what it is and how it could help them in their life, and maybe how I could walk them through reading the Book of Mormon every day and how they could daily receive strength from the Book of Mormon. I would ponder that question and I would study that out. Another bit of advice I would have is be nice to everybody. India is a lot to take in, and there's a lot of people that may try and take advantage of people, of a missionary, especially if they're lighter skin. So be nice to them. Just realize that everyone's just trying to make it in life, and and just be okay with paying an extra 5 rupees for something. Maybe my other companions would not agree with what I'm saying right now. As a matter of principle, you should pay exactly what an Indian should pay. But be nice to everyone. Be generous, be smile, and remember you're always representing the church, and you're always representing Jesus Christ. Especially in India, since they don't run into too many people that are Christian. I know that this church is true, and I know that the Book of Mormon is true, and I know that we are guided by a prophet today, and I know that that in the temple we're able to gain knowledge and strength that we can gain nowhere else. And I say all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
We got there, we went to the mission home, and then we were just split up and assigned to companions, and we were only in the MTC for 17 days or something, but we'd gotten to be, there were 9 of us, we'd gotten to be close buddies already. And I just remember I was getting sent to New Delhi as my first assignment, and that was 3.5 hours by jet plane to get there. And so I was going further away than any of the other guys in my batch. We called them batches, and like cookies. And my mission president, I remember he told me my trainer's like the best. My trainer had been my mission president's assistant until I think that transfer, and he was a really good guy. His name was Elder Ensign, Seth Ensign, is what I've found out since my mission. I didn't know on the mission his name was Seth. But no, I just remember going to the mission home, and Sister Bonham was there, and she loved us and was crying all the time, and President Bonham was just telling us we had a great mission and it was going to be good, and that we were on our own a lot of the time because it was an entire country, and he wasn't there to babysit us at every second. We had to be responsible, and I think we mostly were in my mission. Had a lot of good guys. For some guys, it was culture shock, but I've liked spicy food my whole life, and I don't like the heat, but I had already mentally, I think, prepared that it was going to be hot, and it was hot. My Elder Ensign worked really hard, and he never wanted to stop for anything, but we would always stop for water because that was important. Most of the time when we were fasting in India, we still drank water because that was more of a kind of a health concern. But we got there and we just jumped right into it, and I was sick for the first month. I was throwing up like crazy, and I had diarrhea. And we would teach 8 to 10 lessons a day typically, and I would go to a lesson and then I'd go throw up on the side of the road, try to hide it, try to make sure people didn't see that, but then I could make it through another lesson, and that's how it was for about a month. And then my stomach settled down a bit, but I loved the food immediately. It was hot. New Delhi was like the hottest part of our mission, where there were missionaries at the time, and I think it was like 53 degrees Celsius when I got off the plane in New Delhi, which is I think like 130 degrees or something. And so you're walking around in that all day and walking up and down stairs in apartment buildings and things, and that was a shock for sure. But we lived in an apartment there were 4 of us, and so the next bedroom over was Elder Daniel and Elder Basina, and Elder Daniel had just been trained by my trainer, Elder Ensign, and then he moved over a bedroom, and I don't know, we had a good time. We had a really good time. We had bottled water always because. Well, that's like a different story. We always had bottled water because we weren't supposed to drink the water, but in every home, we also had a mission rule that we couldn't drink caffeine at all. And so in every home, people would bring us tea and coffee, which obviously we're going to respectfully decline that, say, we're so sorry, we just don't drink that. There's a commandment called the Word of Wisdom that we believe in. But then they'd send their kid down the street, like when we were telling them that, and he'd go buy us like 2 Pepsis, which we weren't allowed to drink because that was just a mission rule. And so then we'd have to explain, oh, we're so sorry, we just have a mission rule. This is not really a part of the word of wisdom, but we have a mission rule that we can't drink caffeine, so please you enjoy it. And that was like harder because people would get us those and they couldn't really afford them. That was kind of an extra splurge. I mean, they weren't like, it's like 26 cents for a Pepsi, but I mean, that was an extra like splurge for a lot of people. And so we'd have to turn them down on that. And then they'd bring us out some water from their sink. And so we'd just say, oh, thank you so much. And we'd always drink their water. And it was nice to have water, but it's probably why I was sick there for quite a bit in the beginning, because it just wasn't reasonable to turn down their water too. I mean, it was to the point where like we just had to drink their water. It was kind of being polite. So yeah, India is an incredibly diverse country. It's more diverse than like the United States. Even so much that, so in the United States, I think race is typically the first identifier for people. Like, oh, it was a white guy, or oh, it was a black guy, or oh, it was like a Latino guy. But in India, religion is definitely the first identifier. It was a Hindu guy, it was a Christian guy, it was a Muslim guy. I mean, and that's not... And names mean something in India too. You can tell a guy's Muslim because of his name. You can tell a guy's Hindu because of his name. And Christians usually have biblical names in India. I think they're called the Dravidians. The original people of India were the Dravidians. And they're darker skinned typically. And then I think you had conquering Aryans come in from the Middle East. And they, I think, kind of geographically even pushed... I mean, I'm sure they killed people and then they lived in those places they were moving into. And so the South are typically more Dravidian type people. They're usually a little darker skinned, and they typically speak. So there's a state called Andhra Pradesh. It was actually a month ago split into 2 states. I don't know the name of the new one. India is still getting new states in their country so, all the time. But Andhra Pradesh, everyone in that state typically speaks the language Telugu. And we have the Book of Mormon in Telugu, but the church is only in English in that state still. Hyderabad, where the steak is, that's the capital of Andhra Pradesh. And Andhra Pradesh, I think, had the best food. It was awesome. Then there's a state called Tamil Nadu. And in Tamil Nadu, they speak Tamil. Everyone in India speaks like 5 languages, at least. But you always have your main language. So Tamil Nadu, they speak Tamil. And actually in Sri Lanka, they have the native people of Sri Lanka speak Konkani. But then you have the Tamil Tigers, and there's been a civil war going on in Sri Lanka for 30 years, which I think ended last year, actually. And the Tamil Tigers were, I think, from Tamil Nadu, and they had come down and were trying to ultimately take over Sri Lanka. Then you had like the state of Karnataka, where Bangalore is actually, which Bangalore, when I was there, the Indian government changed the name of Bangalore back to Bengaluru, and so, which was kind of pre-British for it. The British changed it to Bangalore, apparently. And so, I mean, you have major languages that are spoken by, I mean, I think there's 40 languages in India spoken by over 1 million people, which is a lot. And then you have another 900 languages, which are more just kind of, a lot of them are dialects, and a lot of them are just the tribal language. I had a companion who was teaching a guy in New Delhi. I was companions with Elder Rowe in Bangalore. But he was teaching this guy in New Delhi who's from some village in northeast India, which is starting to get more Nepali and starting to get a little more Asian. People are looking a little more Asian than just Indian, I guess. And this guy had killed and eaten 2 people because he was from a cannibal village, and his dad was the king of the village and he was the prince of the village. And it was just some guy. It's not like there wasn't any huge manhunt for him or anything. And India's, I mean, it's a wild place. It was, but they called our mission president, and he was like, "Drop him. The church can't handle that right now here." I mean, the church in India, it's still like pretty young, and one of the things that was a little bit sad, I guess, is one of the branches I served in, at least, there was tons of just backbiting, and this was not typical of India. Most people in India were really loving, but there was tons of backbiting going on, and a lot of members of that branch had been that branch president in that branch, and that branch actually had a higher number of returned missionaries than most branches, and so I think there was some pride that had seeped into the members, kind of, and they kind of thought they knew everything, and there were some problems in that branch, and that was atypical for India, kind of, I feel like, but we were kind of in the middle of it. And our mission president I sat and talked to him about it for a while. He compared it a lot to just early days in the church, where there was just like kind of seeds of discontent growing, and people were really just talking about Joseph Smith, and there was a lot of backbiting going on then too. And that's where the church kind of is in India. It's just young. It's young. There's actually more members of the church in Pakistan than there are in India. There's no American elders in Pakistan, but we do have Pakistani elders. And I don't think they have quite the restrictions of just baptizing that we did in India. And Pakistan's actually in the New Delhi mission now. But that's like one of the things. It's kind of, I mean, it's wild. And we were, as missionaries, we were just out there. I mean, we could do whatever we want. There's no way the mission president would know unless someone told him, but all the missionaries I served with were just obedient, hardworking, good guys. The Indians were all awesome. When elders would get arrested and things, I heard countless stories of their companions being an Indian elder, and the guys saying, "Hey, if you sign this letter that he forced you to convert and is going around making you convert people, we'll buy you a bus ticket, you can go home." And the Indian elders would always say, "Nope, he's my companion, I'm sticking with him." And they were just loyal and good. They were good people. And I think that's just how Indians are. I think they're generally good, really good people. People have this question for me all the time now that I've been back. They're like, "Well, what about the caste system? Is the caste system gone?" I mean, I've heard it's gone. The caste system's not gone. It's not going anywhere. It's built into people's last names. Your last name in India is your caste. And so that's just not, it's thousands of years of culture kind of ingrained. But the word caste, I know in Sanskrit, the word for caste means color. And so the caste system really kind of amounts to racism at the end of the day. And so the lower castes in Indian society were always darker skinned. The higher castes were always fairer skinned. The Brahmins are the highest caste, and they were always very light skinned, Caucasian looking, even though they're Indian. And I know that race is a sensitive topic, and I mean, those things are in the city with the internet and things, those things are changing. And in the church, they change. I mean, and not just our church, but Christianity. There's posters all over in India that teach the way out of the caste system is Jesus, and they say that on these posters that Christians have put up. And in the church, I don't think those things mean a lot. At least we hope they don't most of the time. Hinduism. So I've read about this since, and I've done some studying since my mission. Hinduism doesn't really exist like Christianity exists, or like Islam exists. I guess where Hinduism comes from is when white people, like Europeans or Americans, probably Europeans or British originally, came to India originally. They saw brown people and they needed something to call the people. And so they named them after the Indus River, and so they're Hindus, which is the Indus River. And so Hindus and people who self-identify these days as Hindus, they're really just, it's not really a one thing. It's really hundreds and thousands of little religions and tribal religions and just beliefs that Westerners have kind of lumped in as Hinduism, because that's just what people did in their ignorance, I guess. They just, all these people are just like brown people, we'll call them Hindus, and their religion is Hinduism. And I mean, and that's not to say that there's not lots of similarities between these tribes and things, but 900,000 gods. This, I mean, how can you really say that this guy who worships Krishna is the same religion necessarily as this guy who worships Ram? You know, I don't know that. Now, Indians who come to the United States, they usually self-identify strongly as Hindus, because I think that's because they're trying to be Hindu, because that's, you know, they're the minority at that point, and so they have to like more define who they are religiously than they did before, whereas before they were just who they are. But concepts like nirvana and things like that, those are very Western understandings of concepts that I never heard the word nirvana when I was in India. I never heard the word karma when I was in India. I think that kind of what we've attributed the meanings, there's concepts of those in a lot of Eastern thinking and in a lot of these Hindu religions, I guess, or Indian religions. And there's concepts that kind of represent that, like what comes around goes around. That's kind of a karma. But they're often, I think, broader concepts than that, and not always explicitly recognized even by Indians necessarily. Like, I don't think, it's not like karma is like a principle that is taught to young Indians, and it's just, it's not like faith and how we learn about that in the church, and that's something, this is what it is, and you know, that's not, people aren't taught about or think about those things in India, really. That Hinduism isn't really a united one religion that just teaches and has principles. And so I think that's something that a lot of Americans don't understand, really. A lot of Westerners don't understand. The caste system, that's a huge part of Hinduism. And so you don't marry outside your caste. You don't. It depends on your caste, but you don't associate with people a lot that are outside your caste. Your last name is your caste. So Brahmins are like kind of prideful about that. They're the highest caste, and they're usually more fair-skinned, and they won't go into homes of people who are lower caste than them. And you know, there's problems with that, and I think that's developed that way for a reason. You know, it has over thousands of years. But I mean, so these days with the internet, with people working in tech centers, they can't really not work with people from other castes, because it's usually Americans that are there and hiring people, you know. So they don't really have that option anymore, because the world's become a smaller place. But I think the best example are members of the church. You like join the church, it's usually younger people probably joining the church. And at the church, there's just people that were originally from all these different castes. And I think young people, they start going to young single adult conferences and things like that, and that stuff kind of stopped mattering to them, because they don't really self-identify as with their parents' culture anymore necessarily as much. But India is also arranged marriage culture. And so if their parents are still Hindu, a lot of the time, and there's dowries too. There's dowries too. So Elder Oaks came over and he said dowries are just purely cultural. We're not going to teach against those in the church right now. People can do dowries even within the church. That's fine. But arranged marriage is strictly opposite of God's plan. And so that was something that was a problem we ran into as far as Hindu culture goes, because that's very ingrained in Hindu culture is arranged marriage. And so you have two young members of the church that are from different castes before they were members of the church, and their parents are still Hindu, and time comes for them to marry off their daughter or marry off their son, and they went to a YSA conference and found each other and decided they wanted to get married. And so in India, they have arranged marriages, which is the typical, and then you have love marriages, which is kind of a new, these darn kids kind of thing, you know. And a lot of parents, even parents who had joined the church a lot of the time, if they had a daughter who was marrying a lower caste or something and wanted to, there were even problems like that in the church, because that's just such an ingrained part of the culture that it was hard for, a lot of the time the mission president had to go talk to those parents and say, because the mission president, there was no stakes when I was there, so the mission president was ultimately their ecclesiastical leader of members of the church too. And so the mission president would have to go and be like, listen guys, like this isn't what we do. It's just not a part. These people want to get married and they want to go get sealed in the temple, which is Hong Kong. Like, they have to fly 2,500 miles to Hong Kong right now in India. That's what they want to do. Like, that's what's right. And that's what you should let them do. And parents, a lot of the time parents weren't members of the church. And so it ended up being, missionaries, a unique lesson we teach a lot of the time was the Joseph Smith and Emma Smith eloped lesson. And that's what we encourage young members of the church to do that a lot, because that's what they had to do to get married to someone that they chose to get married to and then to go get sealed. And so we just teach them about Joseph and Emma and read in the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price, I guess, about that. And a lot of the times, parents that weren't members of the church would then come back and get really mad at the church because of that kind of stuff. And so branch presidents started writing, or kids started writing letters to their branch presidents saying, I know you told me to honor my mother and father and that I should just do what they say, but I have to do this, so I'm going to go do it. And really, branch president would be counseling them, but if the parents would come and yell at him, you could show this letter from their kids saying, that kind of left the church out of it, because the church, we can't have the church getting in trouble all the time for just because the church is so young. We don't really want to be on the government radar but that's young members of the church in India are pioneers, and that's a struggle that they have, is they have to get through all of these years of culture, which is a lot of parts of the culture are a really good thing. And but that's one challenge that we faced over there, is that's one of the places where the church and the gospel kind of maybe butted heads a little bit with that Hindu culture, was with the marriage part of it. Goa was ruled by the Portuguese for 400 years. It pretty much ran Portugal's economy. They just took a bunch of spices out of there and would go back and sell them. And the rest of India was ruled by the British for those 400 years. And so Goa has a bit of a different culture than India does. And there's people that speak Portuguese there, and the food's different because it's more of a Portuguese Indian fusion, I guess, than a British Indian fusion. And Goa is very Catholic, and the rest of India is very Hindu. And so Goa is a tough place to serve. There's only a couple of member families that live there. The branch was 15 people, And I mean, some of the elders, since Goa opened when I was on my mission again, but since we'd been there, the elders had only really baptized like a few single guys there, which was good. I mean, they needed it. And a couple of those guys have gone on missions now and done really great things. But we had a family that got baptized when we were there, and we were excited about that. And that was my last baptisms before I went home. We're in Goa. Chennai's big. It's also known as Madras. So if you hear, those are both famous names, and they're both the same city. Chennai was there for 5.5 months, and it is in the state of Tamil Nadu, so everyone there spoke Tamil as their first language. We had the Book of Mormon in Tamil. So Chennai was the most humid city I served in. Incredibly humid, probably 99% humidity. And it was also very hot. It was over 100 degrees. And so it was rough. The transportation in Chennai was also, that was probably the craziest transportation place. So in every city in India, we'd take buses and auto rickshaws to get around. And in 2 cities, we had bicycles that the missionaries just had there. But nowhere else was authorized for bicycles. And so in Chennai, the buses were sometimes so full. These buses are made for probably 60 people to sit down, and then maybe another like 15 to be standing and holding up on the bar. In Chennai, I mean, so maybe like 75 people are supposed to be on these buses. In Chennai, there were buses that had at least 200 people on them sometimes. And you're all packed in there. And so the way it would work with buses, and this was in every city in the mission, not just Chennai, but a lot of the times the buses won't stop at the bus stops. And so you've just got to run after it. And there's usually people all the way out the door, and people, like, you get like one toe on the step and you're hanging on to other people, and that's how you're staying in the bus. And so we'd have to run, and you jump up and you grab the bar, and you get like one toe, and it's fine. That's fine, because you're like hanging out the bus, but sometimes it was so full, there were like 200 people on it, that you had to like hang on to another person. And that's when you're a little scarier, because then you're completely dependent on that person being able to hold on to whatever they're holding on to. And that could be a couple people deep sometimes. And in Chennai, there were times where the buses were so packed that there were guys, so there's no doors in the buses, and the windows were typically down, so there's holes for the windows. And there were times where there was guys standing in the window with their arm up inside and their leg up inside all the way along the bus, just hanging out of the bus. And it was crazy. And so there's a conductor that works his way through the crowd, and he comes and collects your like 2 or 3 rupees for your bus ride. And because we were more long term, we'd usually go to the city and get a bus pass before. So all we had to do was like pull it out of our pocket and flash our bus pass at the conductor, and then he knew that we'd already paid for our monthly bus pass. But buses, and the way you get off the buses, they don't stop. They still don't stop at the stops. So a lot of new missionaries, I never did this, but there were missionaries who did. A lot of new missionaries jump off the bus, and because you have the momentum, you fall forward and you scrape up your knees and tear holes in your clothes and things like that. So what you have to do is, you're getting off the bus, they could be going like 20, 25 miles an hour. I don't know, it's pretty fast sometimes. But you get off the bus and you lean backwards as you get off, and then you jump off, and then you run, and you like, your body catches, the momentum gets you to where you don't fall over because you were leaning backwards when you fell out of the bus. And you have to know how to do that, or else you fall on your knees and you're hurting for a while. And so that was how that typically was. If we were late to an appointment and didn't have time to wait for a bus, then we'd usually take auto rickshaws, which they're a 2-stroke engine, and they have handlebars like this inside these little yellow encased things. And they're just, back in the day, they used to all go by meter, which the government set the rate for them. But none of those guys want to use the meter, because the economy, it costs more to run your thing than the government rate is. And so you usually would just argue or haggle with the auto driver. And auto drivers, if you're in a companionship that was just American, they usually just think you're a couple of foreigners, and so they want to kind of rip you off maybe a little bit because they know they can, because tourists who come there, they just, okay, it's like $2, big deal. Well, $2 is way more than any auto ride was. I mean, an auto ride would usually be like maybe 15 cents but I mean, if you had foreigners come and they're like, okay, it's just $2, big deal. So auto drivers know when it's like foreign people, they can get that out of it, so why not? But we lived there and we weren't going to pay that because we didn't really have the budget for that anyway, to be able to pay that much if you're taking all these auto rides. So you just argue with the guy for a while, and eventually you come to consensus on what you're going to pay him to go to whatever places you need to go, and then he drives you there. And we were like incredibly obedient in our missions, so our day typically started, you wake up at 6:30 and you exercise for half an hour, even if you guys are so tired that you just like pick something up and sit in a thing and lift it like this or something. We like made sure we were doing something just to be obedient, which was sometimes not really like the intention of those rules and things, to exercise for half an hour, but we always tried to be at least obedient to the letter of the law of things. And then at 7 we'd start getting ready, and so when I was in, this is a little bit of a tangent, but when I was like my first day, you start your personal study at 8, and I just went in there at like 8 o'clock, probably 8:01, 8:02, and I like had my bowl of cereal and I was sitting there like reading the Book of Mormon. And then during companionship study, my trainer was like, Elder Rostrom, you know how we like turn the light off at 10:30 at night? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that's kind of how it is with personal study. We got to like start personal study at 8 o'clock. And like usually breakfast is done before that. In that hour, you have to get ready. And I was like, oh, I just had no idea. I wasn't trying to be disobedient, or that didn't even dawn on me that was a problem. And so it was like that obedient to the missionary schedule and things like that. All the guys I served with were really obedient, and that was just something I think our mission president really ingrained, is just obedience and being obedient. And we had a lot of good guys in our mission. So there was a place right across from our apartment. It was called Little Hut, but the letters on the sign weren't in English. They were Tamil. And Little Hut, that's where we'd eat a lot because it was close to our apartment. And so you could grab food and run up to your apartment and eat for lunch or for dinner. We actually didn't eat lunch most of the time in my mission. We typically just took dinner. But that place was made out of sticks. It was sticks on the sides and sticks on the roof. And they had a huge pot in the back and some pots, and they had a ton of things on their menu they'd make for you, but dirt floors. And that's how restaurants were a lot of the time. Other restaurants, some of them that were a little nicer, they had like floors, and it was like an open building, usually in the front with like a roll down kind of garage door. But during the day, those were up, and you go eat in there, and if you wanted water with it, there was like 4 cups, metal cups on the table always, and the same cups were used by everyone all day long. In India, you don't put your mouth on cups, and that's just the culture. And you can be I never felt like it was really gross because people really don't put their mouths on the cups. So you hold them up above your mouth, and you'd waterfall it down into your mouth. And it's kind of gross that the same cups are there all day and they're not washed or anything, and everyone's using them, but at the same time, no one touched them to their mouths. So, and everyone uses their right hand to pick them up, so that's all just very normal social customs there. But yeah, we'd take auto rickshaws and buses everywhere, or we'd walk. People typically don't have cars. People drive motorcycles or take buses everywhere, and so I saw families with like 10 people on one motorcycle several times. And the law in India requires that people the driver of the motorcycle wears a helmet. So like the dad would always have a helmet on, and then his wife would be sitting like side saddle in the back, and she'd have a couple kids, and there'd be kids. None of them had helmets on. It was always just the dad, because that's what the law required, and people didn't have money to go get extra helmets. There were beaches in Chennai. I don't remember our baptismal font situation, but we had several baptisms at the beach, so maybe we just didn't have a... No, we had one in our branch. Okay, Chennai. Here's a good story from Chennai. So President Bonham, I was in Chennai when President Bonham was going home, and we were getting President Nichols. And so it was President Bonham's last day. He was getting on an airplane that night, and President Nichols was coming the next day, and to be the new mission president. And we had a baptism that day that President Bonham was leaving. And we were baptizing 2 kids. One of them was 14. The girl was 14, and the guy was 18. And their mom was going to get baptized the next week, and she had signed the permission slip for her kids to get baptized. And their dad was like an illiterate drunkard who wandered around the neighborhood sometimes, but didn't know even Tamil, how to read or write Tamil, no English, hadn't really been a part of their family. Their mom was a teacher in a Catholic school. They were Catholic before. But at the baptism, the dad came in, and he's just cussing and yelling at us all in Tamil, and refused to let the baptism happen, and he's just mad and angry, and so he's yelling at us. And so we called President Bonham, and I just asked President Bonham what he wanted us to do, if we should not baptize them or hold off, and it was President Bonham's last day, and so he of course was like, yeah, just baptize them. And so we baptized them both, and then their mom the next week. But we showed up to the church, my companion Elder Guntu and I. We showed up to the church the next day after their baptism for an appointment or something. We met with people at the church a lot. And there was a thing nailed to the door that we were getting sued. Elder Guntu and I, as the fathers of the church. The church was getting sued, and we were getting sued individually. And so I have those documents still in my journal. I made copies of them and glued them into my journal. But we were inside our apartment for like a week. We couldn't do anything. We had lawyers calling us from New Delhi and from Hong Kong, because that's where the church had lawyers, I guess. And eventually those baptisms were declared as null and void by the church. They were taken off the records of the church, because that's what was worked out. And so I guess their mother, even though she was Catholic, had been married to him in a Hindu marriage ceremony. And so the laws that applied were that the father, because it was a Hindu marriage ceremony, there's different laws that apply than if it had been a Christian marriage ceremony, I guess. That's just India. But their father had complete custody of the kids by rule until they were 19 and no longer considered minors in India, and at least in a Hindu marriage in India. And so Jitesh, who was the 18-year-old, he got baptized a few months later when he turned 19, and their daughter Anu, she got baptized when Josh Kadika, who I told you about, when he was serving his mission there. And so their mother and those two are still active in the church today. They stayed active for all those years, even though they hadn't been baptized, or they had been, but then hadn't been. And then they were baptized again when they could be. And so, but it's interesting, because that's like, you hear, whatever is bound on earth is bound in heaven. And then whatever's loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. That's kind of an instance where they were loosed, because that's just what, I guess, the church respects the law, and that's what the law required. So daily living otherwise in Chennai, we'd be in people's homes, and people typically didn't have beds. They just had like a roll-out mat they would put on the floor. It wasn't padded or anything. It's just like reeds, like grass. It was made out of grass usually, and that's what they'd sleep on. That's and usually homes only had 1 or 2 rooms. There's usually a kitchen and a room. And so people would, when we came to teach, people didn't have furniture to sit on. They'd usually roll out their bed mat. We'd all sit cross-legged on the floor and teach people. I remember there were times that we were so tired because, we worked hard, but we were so tired that my companion and I would, if we were just teaching a single guy or something, we'd each sit on one side of him against the wall, cross-legged, and then I'd like sleep a little bit while my companion was teaching, and then he'd like tap me, and then he'd sleep a little bit because we were so tired and we were just working. We wouldn't take lunches usually, or we wouldn't take dinners. That's what it was, and we just worked all the time, and we were up when we needed to be, and so but we could do that because he could only look at one of us at a time if we're sitting against a wall on the floor, because it wasn't like a living room arrangement where there's chairs to kind of sit and talk. It was, you sit on the floor, and that's just how people's homes were. Bathrooms. In missionary apartments, we had Western toilets because that was one of the church's requirements for an apartment. And we usually had 2, when I was there, we usually had 2 companionships in each apartment because we got all those missionaries right then, so they hadn't gotten single apartments for each companionship. But we usually had a window air conditioning unit in each room, and that was like really rich in India. Like you could look up our apartment buildings, and there was no one that had 2 air conditionings, and only half the places even had 1 air conditioning in them. And so that people thought we were really rich because we had 2 air conditionings. And so people would always say AC, like an AC car or an AC apartment or something, and that meant you were kind of rich. And even though we weren't really that rich, we had pretty nice apartments because I think for the church they were pretty cheap in India. And that kind of stuff was cheaper than it typically is in a lot of missions. We didn't have to pay for our apartments. That was just part of the whole deal. But to go grocery shopping, I would think about how it'd be so crazy to transport somehow an Indian into a Walmart or something in the United States, because that's nothing like anything they'd ever seen. They don't even have grocery stores like Smith's or anything like that. To get our groceries, we'd usually go to a place, and it would just be like a little roll up, probably 5-foot wide window, and it was just an individual person that somehow would get grocery stuff there. And they had all the typical, they had rice that was just in open bags, and they just measure by weight how much you wanted. They usually had several varieties of rice to choose from. And if you ever saw a jar of peanut butter or a can of tuna fish or something, you usually just grab that, because groceries weren't really, it's not like in the United States where groceries are just stocked all the time and it's all what you want. If you saw a can of tuna fish, you grab it because who knows if there's going to be tuna fish there again or something. They just kind of get things like that are more kind of special. And so to get your groceries, you go to places like that. If you wanted chicken, you go to a chicken stall. And I remember the one chicken stall I'd go to a lot, because for whatever reason we were cooking a lot of chicken curry or something in that apartment. If you wanted to get chicken, you go to a chicken stall, and like a little kid, I remember the one we'd go to a lot, there's a little kid working there. He's probably 6 or 7, and he's just in a dirty apron, and they'd pull a chicken out, it'd be squawking, and he'd put its head down on a log and take this big knife and just cut its head off, and then throw the chicken into a bucket, and it would just run around the bucket for a sec and be spurting blood out. And then when it slowed down a bit, after a couple minutes, the kid would take it, dunk it in some water, and just peel all the skin and feathers off all at once. It was like peeling an orange. And then he'd cut it into whatever size pieces you wanted for your curry. With a saw, basically. I think he had a powered saw, but a lot of chicken salt in it. And bag it up, and that's how you got chicken. You just sit there and watch the chicken be killed. And I don't know. That sort of stuff didn't bother me, but I think it was weird for some guys. If you wanted like fish or lamb is what I'm thinking. You'd go to like a lamb stall and they just have a whole lamb hanging up there, and they'd cut off the cuts you wanted, and there's usually flies all over it, and so you have to take it home, make sure you cook it. And I mean, it wasn't all that sort of stuff wasn't pretty packages. It was just, I don't know, it seemed pretty oldie times, kind of like. And you didn't get meats in your grocery stores like you do today. It was, you go to a chicken place, and in like the coastal villages, you could go get fish, and they'd have fish hanging up all over the place. You could pick out whatever fish you wanted. They had different types of, so they call it dal. I think we just call it lentils in the United States. They're like little vegetables, and you could go and there's different types of dal, and you could get those at the grocery store, and they'd measure that by weight and give it to you in a bag. And then you could get Fanta. They had one that was white called Limca, Pepsi, Coke, and Sprite. And I think that was like it as far as soft drinks are concerned. And we drink a lot of those because I think we typically felt like they were bottled and kept cleaner than most of the stuff you could get. So it'd be healthier for you just to get a little bottle of Sprite and drink it. And they're glass bottles. You had to return the bottles to the store, so you couldn't take those home with you, because the store would then bring them back to the Coca-Cola plant, I think, and get reimbursed for them. So you weren't allowed to just take them. That's how you get your groceries, though. And there's food all over the place. There's guys with carts with piles of bananas on them. There's guys with carts with like a thing of deep fryer, and jalebi was one of the street foods, and one of them was pani puri, which is, pani is water in Hindi, but they were just these little like shells, little crispy shells that you could they'd pop a hole in. You give them a rupee and they give you 6 of these pani puris, I think, which a rupee's 2 cents. And they just pop a hole in it, dip it in their thing of like dirty spiced water in their cart, and give it to you, and you eat it. The guy's handing them to you directly, and you just pop them in your mouth as you go. One of the things that was weird is all their food's like spicy and has spices in it. I think in the United States we flavor our food with fats and oils more, and so it kind of tastes good. Like hamburgers, they don't have any spices in them really. It's just the flavor of the fat that we like. But in India, everything's flavored by spices, and so that was kind of different. But I remember like breakfast even, it's like flavored by spices. It's not like spicy, like hot spicy, the breakfast wasn't, but it's like flavored by like cinnamon maybe, or a spice, and it wasn't like sweet ever, it was like spices. And so it was like, I remember like my first month just craving like a donut or something, because it would just be like total contrast to all the food. But breakfast food, there was masala dosa, which is like a huge flat kind of pancake thing, and then they put this green like potato mixture inside, and then you roll it up, and then you eat that. And that was like a breakfast. And the potato stuff had spices in it, had like turmeric in it, and that was hard to get used to. I just think the people of India are the most kind people in the world. They would really give you the coat off their back, like everyone, at least people in the South. And they're always willing to share what little they had already. I knew Indian families that were living on 1,000 rupees a month, a family of like 5. And as missionaries, we were given like 7,500 rupees a month to live on each. And I mean, people are in really humble circumstances there, but they're just happy. They're generally loving. My companions were just, they're good guys. They're willing to serve, and they worked hard. And I only had one companion that we had any kind of problems, and of all my companions, and I had like 23 companions, I think, because I was emergency transferred a couple times because of getting arrested or whatever. And so they were all just good guys. And there was only one that there was any sort of problems with at all, and it wasn't really that big of a deal at the end of the day. They're incredibly faithful. They love God. So the one story, there's a guy I wanted to buy. There's a guy we'd go get coconuts from. He just had a little cart. He had coconuts on it. And guys in India with coconut carts, they have big curved knives, and they use those to cut the top of the coconut, and then they put a straw in there, and you can buy it. It costs a rupee, which is 2 cents. And there's a guy, and so they sell them for a rupee, and I'm sure they sell a fair amount of them. But this guy had his coconut knife, and I think these knives, if you go get them new, they cost like 200, 300 rupees. Which is what, like $6? But if people are living on 1,000 rupees a month, that's a pretty good chunk. And I wanted, and I don't mean any disrespect by this story, but I think it's a good little story. This guy was a Hindu man, and he sold coconuts. And I wanted to buy his coconut knife because it had been used quite a bit, and I wanted to buy one that had seen some action. And so I offered him 500 rupees, which was more than they cost. He could go buy himself a brand new one that wasn't as beat up as this one and have a brand new one. And at first he didn't want to sell it to me, and he didn't speak English, but we could communicate, and I asked him why he didn't want to sell it to me, and he told me that it was his god. The coconut knife was his god. That's what he worshipped. And that's going back to Hindus. They love God. But that knife is what provided for him. That's what provided for his family. And so that's what he worshipped as his god. And so I doubled I told him I'd give him 1,000 rupees, and he sold it to me. But Indians, I think they just love God, and that they don't necessarily know who he is, and that they want to worship him, they want to love him, they want to pay respect to him. But I just think after thousands of years of being geographically isolated, with the Himalaya mountains to the north and Mount Everest to the north, and then ocean all around, people just have a really twisted idea of who God is. And that, I think, is manifest in all these representations of God that show up in Hinduism. And so that's something, Indians love God. And that was something that we were able to come and share a message of who God is. And that's really the first thing missionaries teach in the lessons now, is that God is our loving Heavenly Father, that He's like us, that He's a perfect being, and that He wants us to become like Him. And there were a lot of people ready for that message. And when they knew who He was, they loved Him, and they didn't leave that. That's why we had such a high retention rate, because the faithfulness of the Indian people. So in the north, everything is curries and breads, so lots of flatbreads and tandoori chicken. So you have the kind of tandoori influence in the north, and so it's just flatbreads. In the United States, everyone loves naan, Naan. That wasn't the most common bread in India, at least in my experience. Rotis were the most common. I think they're a whole wheat flatbread, and they were cooked on a stone that had been heated up and had a little oven above it. And you eat those. You eat with your right hand in India. You don't touch it. Your left hand is really disrespectful. You don't touch people with your left hand. You don't touch things or eat your food with your left hand. Your left hand is what people use to wipe in India. So I think that's just evolved as a disrespectful thing because of that over thousands of years. But you eat with your right hand directly. And so, you usually take a piece of bread, and then you take some curry with it. And so this is kind of interesting. I was explained to this specifically by someone who had already figured it out before me. I think my trainer probably. But Americans like reach out with their tongue to grab their food. Indians, you take your food and you take these 3 fingers and you put them in your mouth. And then you use your thumb to kind of like steamroll the food off into your mouth. And so you pick up some curry and bread and you push it in. That's how you eat. And then in the South, everything's rice and curries. And so there isn't really flatbread in the South as much. And so my favorite thing is chicken biryani. I'm sure that's what Josh Jackson said in his interview as well. I don't know. Good chicken biryani. There were times where I was in people's homes in the South eating chicken biryani. And I was, we always like, there's no beef. People don't eat beef in India because they're Hindu, and Hindus worship cows and respect cows. And so we always wanted steak and things. There's like, oh man, I miss having steak. Like that's something I miss from home. But there were times where I was sitting in people's homes eating chicken biryani that they had made, and I wouldn't have traded it for a steak even then. It was so good. And biryani is just rice that's been cooked with spices, and if it's chicken biryani, it's been cooked with whole pieces of chicken with the bone in it and everything. And it's just all cooked for hours in a big pot, and it's just so good. And yet it's hard to eat it with a fork because there's things in there you don't eat that are like whole cloves and things like that. That it's a spice that adds flavor to the rice, but you can't eat a clove. It's like eating a stick. So you have to pull stuff out as you're eating. And chicken biryani is my favorite. Another thing that if you were eating out, they called them hotels. If you're eating out at a restaurant, a hotel, then one of the cheap things to go get, which is a pretty typical Indian meal, was they called it meals. If you went and got meals, that meant you usually got a banana leaf on your table, and then like little metal cups of just like probably 10 different types of curries. And a curry is it's not like a specific thing. It's just what they call their food. It's like it's like almost like saying a casserole and expecting that to be one thing. A curry is more like a category of food, and then there are different curries within that category. And so meals was a banana leaf, probably 10 different curries, and then they'd just come around and it was usually unlimited rice. So they just can put rice on your banana leaf, and you could take whatever curry you want, mix it in, grab it, put it in your mouth, and it was just awesome. You're eating off a banana leaf. It's just what people do over there, but it's just like a really cool experience for missionaries not from India. Like, we don't eat off banana leaves here. And so that was fun. But yeah, no beef. They have McDonald's in India, and they don't have beef. Which, you think McDonald's. They have their french fries and they're good. They have ice creams. They have like McCurry pans, and so McDonald's has like a regional menu but no beef on it, and that's kind of a funny thing. The British colonized India, and like I said before, and they had it for over 400 years. So a lot of people speak English, but they definitely, Indians definitely have a distinctive accent. And as missionaries, for a long time, we all tried to talk like that, and we kind of eventually shut that down. And I think that was a lot of missionaries before us had kind of tried to mimic their accent, and we taught like that, and that's how I was trained to teach. But probably 2/3, 3/4 the way through my mission, we kind of shut that down in my mission. We started just trying to enunciate our words better and speak a little bit slower to people, because it could be seen as offensive almost, maybe to be trying to mimic someone's language, but it did also at the same time it did help people understand us, and so there was kind of a trade-off. Lots of unique Indian phrases. I actually read an article the other day online about this, and a lot of it's because it's a direct translation of a Hindi phrase maybe, or a Tamil phrase, or a Telugu phrase, and so those don't always translate perfectly. But like one thing is, like if you hit your elbow, you'd say I'll try to do the accents, but be like, my elbow is paining like anything. Just it's paining as it's hurting. Instead of saying hurting, they typically say paining. If we were getting in an argument with an auto rickshaw driver to try to get our price where what was a fair price, the guy would be maybe trying to rip us off, and we say, "Brother, how we can survive? How we can survive? You're charging so much money. How we're to pay? No one can pay." Also, Indians say "also" a lot in English after a lot of phrases. I don't know. It's got to be a translation thing. What other? But so like I'll just do it when we go to some people's houses when we were still speaking like that. We'd say something like, "Brother, we're coming from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're sharing you one message about this boy. His name is the Joseph Smith. You're wanting to hear this message anytime?" And I mean that's how we talk a lot, and people were responsive to it. But that's how they speak. Indians always say that they believe in the God. It's always the God instead of they believe in God. And even members of the church, they're bearing their testimonies. I know that the God is there. I know that the Heavenly Father is there. So that's like kind of a unique thing. But there's a lot of really educated people in India, and you could speak to them. I mean, if you spoke really fast, like Americans, I think, tend to do, then you'd lose people sometimes. But if you just spoke to people in kind of a good, normal tone, you could usually communicate fairly well. And we ended up using a lot of hand gestures because you're speaking with people on the streets or bus conductors, people who aren't necessarily as educated and maybe don't know English. Those people we still had to be able to communicate with, and we weren't allowed to learn local languages. And so there's usually like some English phrases as well in Bollywood movies, I know. And so there's some like common phrases that people just understand because they've been adopted into Hindi language, I guess. And we did that in America with some things. If there's missionaries watching this in the future, I don't want others to be nervous or anything, but we would get arrested with fairly frequently. I was arrested like 5 times, and if my mission presidents are watching this, you didn't know about all those because I didn't want to get emergency transferred out. But usually I think it's one of 2 reasons that we were arrested. One, it's that we were American, and so it was presumed that we had lots of money relative to Indians generally. And individual police officers, a lot of the time, I think wanted to get bribes so they could get some extra money. And they thought that white guys were kind of an easy target. That's the case, but we weren't allowed to give bribes. That's a rule the church has, I think, worldwide generally. And so, we would just threaten we didn't have cell phones when I was there, so we would just threaten to call the embassy a lot and pull out we had cards from the embassy with the seal on it and signed by the guy, but we didn't have a phone. So, our threats were very empty, but we would threaten to call the embassy a bunch and tell them we had rules, we weren't allowed to give money. And every time, eventually, when I was detained, I would just kind of be like quietly let go. Like after several hours every time for me. We had other elders who were in there for a couple days, and that was kind of a rare occurrence. That happened like 2 or 3 times on my mission, or it was kind of a big deal. But little arrests happened all the time, I think. And honestly, one thing for me is I was never scared at all about that stuff. I knew that what I was doing was right, and that's where I was supposed to be. I knew I wasn't violating any laws or anything. So the first was bribes. The second reason I think we get arrested is because sometimes there's Hindu nationalist parties, and they disagree with Gandhi. Gandhi, one of his big points was that India needed to become a secular country so that it could survive in these days without being overrun by other countries like Britain had at the time. And so Gandhi was instrumental in creating India as it is today. And a lot of Indians don't necessarily accept Gandhi's India. Before that, India was lots of kingdoms. There were Muslim kingdoms, there were Hindu kingdoms, and the Maharajas led the Hindu kingdoms, and sultans led the Muslim kingdoms. And a lot of people still feel that is how it should be, and a lot of them blame Gandhi for their poverty, and a lot of that's misplaced in a lot of ways. But sometimes you had police officers who were members of these Hindu nationalist parties, and they just wanted to cause problems so they believed that it should be a Hindu country, that no Muslims should be allowed to live there, no Christians should be allowed to live there. It should be a Hindu country, Hindu government. And a lot of these guys just wanted to cause problems with Christians. It never was really aimed at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or members of the church. It was always just their perception was causing problems with Christians in general. And I think because of the way we dressed and that we're an easily recognizable symbol of Christ as missionaries, that they'd cause problems with us and arrest us, and then they'd have news crews come, and it would be reported that these Christians were causing problems and things like that. And so that way, when I think this happened more right before elections in India, and that way, when election time came around, people would vote for these Hindu nationalists to get seats in the Indian government. And so those were kind of the 2 reasons that we were arrested. It was never like a personal thing, really. But there was also at that time not a lot we could do about it. I know the missionaries there now have cell phones, and so I think they just call the mission president right away, and the mission president always just gets members to go, and they can get it worked out pretty quickly. But there was a bit of a delay. When I was there still, we just didn't have cell phones. We weren't allowed to have cell phones, and that changed about 6 weeks before I left my mission. They started handing out cell phones to the elders, and I actually never had one on my mission because they hadn't gotten to me where I was yet. But so as far as restrictions from the government, though, there aren't technically any restrictions put on us. I mean, sometimes individual government people would try to say there were, but there weren't. We're allowed to, I think that, well, I don't know if this was government or just kind of what had evolved as mission culture, but we didn't typically, as a rule, we felt like we weren't supposed to just knock on people's door unless someone had referred us to that house or something like that. We didn't just knock doors. We didn't need to. There's people everywhere in India to just talk to on the buses and everywhere. But we just felt, for some reason, we didn't knock on doors just as we didn't just go and knock every door in every place. I think that was more because we didn't want to cause I think there had been some problems with some Muslims or something like that, and so we'd always try to, if there was a door we wanted to knock for some reason, we'd always, like, because we didn't know Indian languages and we were actually disobedient if we tried to learn local Indian languages. There's like 937 languages in India, and the church is only in English. But if we'd usually just find a guy on the street and just be like, "Hey, is this a house we can go to?" And the guy'd be like, "Ah, yeah." And we didn't know what he didn't know what we were talking about. We didn't know what he was talking about, but he'd point at the house, and we'd usually count that as a referral. And then we'd go knock on the door, and we were almost always invited in to talk to people. And people, especially in South India, people are very hospitable. They love having company over. They love to invite people over into their homes, and I think a lot of the time it helped that for when in the companionship there was an American, because people really wanted to have white people in their house. But even the Indians, I think, were always just really treated with respect by people generally. And so I got my call, and we were all like we picked up my sisters early from school to open it. And we were all in my minivan, and I read it, and my mom was like bawling immediately. And then she goes, "Do you mean Indiana?" And I was like, "No, Mom, it says the India Bangalore mission." And everyone that we talked to said, "I had no idea we had missionaries in India." And that's all we heard. Any of my companions in the MTC, that's all we had heard for a couple months until we went into the MTC. And that was kind of a funny thing. And then in the MTC, apparently there were 40 of us called that year, because it's the first time the church had these visas. That they'd always only had 16 visas before that, and then they got these new ones. And people in the MTC were like, I was in the third batch that was sent out that year out of 40 that had gone, and there were people that had been there for 12 weeks, and they were like, "Oh, it's Hinckley's Fearless 40. Oh, it's because President Hinckley was the one that had issued our mission calls." And I mean, it did a lot to make our elders kind of cocky, I think, at the beginning, and kind of like, "Ooh," and I don't know. We tried to all stay away from that kind of, but it was kind of a funny thing. In Delhi, there's elephants walking out in the streets in traffic with motorcycles, people's cars, buses, and auto rickshaws, and there's elephants going down the streets. And so one of these times I flagged down the guys with the elephants. I paid them, I don't know, 20 rupees or something, and they let me get up and ride their elephant, and I got some pictures. My companion took some pictures so I could have some pictures on an elephant, and that was cool. I mean, and I don't know, these guys use them to pull carts behind them sometimes, or I don't know, they take them to weddings a lot, I think, and so there's still elephants roaming the streets in India. In Hyderabad, you hear the Muslim call to prayer at 3 o'clock, I think, every day or whatever it is. And so Hyderabad was a Muslim kingdom before. It had a sultan. I think they still have a sultan who's kind of like the king and queen of England. They're not really the government anymore, but they're kind of a figurehead. So Hyderabad, when I was there, I rode a camel, because that's just, I don't know, for some reason camels are a little more Muslim than, and they had, I'd paid the guys a couple of rupees to ride their camel, and those guys let us ride. My companion and I both rode. We just rode camels all the way around several blocks to our next appointment, actually, and then got off, and those guys just left us. But so we got to ride camels. And then in Bangalore, and the snakes were more often, but I just really wanted to get a picture with a cobra, because there's cobra. You see them in the streets sometimes, and in Kakinada, I rode my bike over one time, because I was just flying to my next appointment, and I saw it, and I didn't have time to do anything, so I just went over it. But yeah, in Bangalore, there was a beggar who, we weren't allowed to give beggars money in India, just a church rule, I guess. But if beggars were selling some sort of service, then I felt fine about buying that service if I wanted to. If they're selling some flowers or like a newspaper or something, and then I would typically do that, because that way I could kind of get around that rule without breaking it, but still help someone. And so there's a beggar coming around. I really wanted to anyway, but there's a beggar coming around with a big old basket and took the lid off, and this cobra came jutting out of it, and she like hit it with the lid of the basket, and it goes down, and it was up, and she let us hold the basket and grabbed it right around the neck, right by the head, so it couldn't, and we got it and took pictures of it, and there's pictures I have with me holding it, and it's just like a picture of me holding a cobra. It looks really cool. And then I had a companion who was an Indian, and he's holding it, and he's squeezing it so tight because he was terrified, because he'd grown up being taught to be terrified of cobras because obviously they're dangerous. And so he was really scared, and so it's funny to compare the pictures, because me, I'm like excited to be like holding it. I was just like excited. Another like animal thing, because Indians regard the cow as sacred, or Hindus at least, there's cows wandering around the streets all over the place, and people don't want them in their shops. They come into the shop and people hit them and have them go out, but there's cows, and the Indian bovine cows they have this weird hump on their back that our cows in the United States don't have, and so that was another common thing. Where we went to register like our housing when we first got to Bangalore, there was big old fruit bats up in the trees, tons of them, thousands of fruit bats in the trees above the government office, and they looked like the vampire bats from Indiana Jones, but they're just fruit bats, but they're huge. And there was a couple times where I saw spiders that were about this big on people's wall. I was with Elder Rowe one time, and we killed one of those because freaked us out. I don't know. It's huge. It was like bigger than two of my fists. And I don't know. It's just crazy. Some crazy wildlife, snakes, and there's the jungle. It's the Jungle Book, so it's just stuff like that. So it's my understanding that the India Bangalore mission, as its own mission, opened in 1993, and then it closed in 1995 for some reason, and all the missionaries were kicked out or had to leave, all the non-Indian missionaries. And then it opened again in 99. And the whole time that there were missionaries there, American missionaries there, foreign missionaries there, the church only had 16 visas that it was open, and that included the couple missionaries. And so they usually only had like 10 American elders there, and then however many Indian elders they could kind of recruit at that time. The mission president had to be kind of a recruiter, and so the church was growing in India. The people of India they love to worship God, and they love God. And I think that's evidenced by them having 900,000 gods in Hindu culture. Where kind of we came in is people don't really know who God is relative to themselves, or really always what his role is in their lives. And so people would be baptized this whole time the mission was open, and people would stay active in the church. When I was there, I know we had an 83% retention rate, pretty much standard, solid through the whole time I was there, which is very high, as from what I've gathered speaking to other missionaries. But that's not really credit, I don't think, to the missionaries or anything. That was because the people of India are faithful and they love God, and once they've found the truth, they hold on to it. And so it opened again in 99, and then continued with those 16 visas until 2006. And in 2006, India's ambassador to the United States, came and visited Salt Lake City, and President Hinckley and Elder Oaks and I think a couple other apostles took him around, showed him Welfare Square, showed him Temple Square, just really explained to him that good members of the church end up being good citizens, and productive citizens usually. And he was so impressed with the church here that he granted the church unlimited visas that year. And and going forward, unlimited visas. And so they called President Bonham and asked him how many missionaries he wanted, and he told them that he thought the mission could handle 40 new missionaries, which was quadrupling, the number of young missionaries that were there in India. And so I was part of that 40. And we went, and we just had, in New Delhi when I was there were 2 branches of the church. And now there's, I think last I heard, there's 10 branches of the church. But we were just on top of each other when I was there. It was, we had like 4 companionships in each branch. But we could still split up that branch's area into 4 chunks. And I still had areas that had over like 10 million people in them, because it's India. There's like almost 1.3 billion people in India these days. There's 1.2 something. And so, that ended up being a huge deal. And we were baptized. We would baptize a lot of people because people in India love Americans was one of the things. But we didn't allow people to get baptized because we were Americans. The Asia Area Presidency and our mission president were really worried about that people would just get baptized and just because of who we were. And obviously we don't want that. We want people to be baptized because of who Jesus Christ is and how he's our Savior, and because they want to do what he wants for them. And so as a mission, we made it hard for us to baptize people. And I think that's kind of why our retention rate was higher. We just had a lot of rules about kind of what people had to do to be baptized. I believe that if I could have learned local languages and gone into some of these congregations or Hindu temples or churches, I could have baptized thousands of people on my mission. But I don't think that would have necessarily done any good. You'd have a lot of inactive members of the church, people who hadn't really had the time to develop their faith in Christ. So anyway, 2006, I was there from 2006 to 2008, and the mission split in 2007, late 2007. And I stayed in the Bangalore mission, but I had already gotten to serve in New Delhi, so that was fine for me. That was preferable to me, actually. I loved New Delhi, but I just had more places that I hadn't been in the Bangalore mission. So the culture in India, the north is quite different from the south. The north is more, I think it's a little more Middle Eastern almost than the south part. And there's been other peoples that have come in from the north and kind of pushed the original indigenous Indian people down into the south. So the south is, I feel like it's more Indian, and the north is more kind of has Asia coming in and kind of Middle East coming in. And so the north, they're just different. The food's different. But anyway, so we were there. The mission split in 2007. And this whole time there's just districts. And when I was there were 3 districts in the whole country. And so it split into the New Delhi district being in the mission in the north, and then the Hyderabad and Bangalore districts being the mission in the south, essentially. And we also in the south got Sri Lanka and the Maldives Islands. We actually got those from the Singapore mission, I think. And then it wasn't until, I think, 2012 that India got their first stake. When I was there, Hyderabad had 4 branches, and they're up to I think they're now up to 15. I'm just kind of making that number up, but they have they're a stake now, and they have the Hyderabad stake. And so that was a big deal, because now they're able to have a patriarch that's starting to be trained in India, and members of the church there will be able to start getting patriarchal blessings for really the first time. The only members of the church who have gotten patriarchal blessings there so far are really just people have gone on missions, and they get them when they go to Manila, Philippines to go to the MTC, and they are all from the tribe of Ephraim. But I mean, I personally believe that that's because they're the ones that are going out and preaching the gospel, which is primarily the tribe of Ephraim's responsibility. And so that's the blessings that they're also going to be given. But I'm interested to see when a patriarch is in India and starts, telling people what their tribe of Israel is, that I think the Indians generally have got to be one tribe of Israel that we don't necessarily have a lot in our church yet, or know of necessarily. We only taught people who knew English, and so I tend to think that pretty much everyone knew English, but that's just people I generally dealt with. There's like slums in India. There were some members that had been baptized like a long time ago that, according to our rules today, they probably shouldn't have been baptized, and they're inactive. So that's why we're going there to visit them, and they didn't know English. But a lot of people know English in India. Like I said before, most Indians know 5-6 languages, and so English is an important one, especially in the cities where we typically serve, because people want to get jobs working for tech centers and call tech support and things like that, because they pay well. And so that is one thing, is the church is only in English in India right now. And I'll come along to some specific phrases and things, but the church is only in English at this point. And so there are people that have been coming to church for a couple years that we haven't baptized because they haven't learned English yet. And some people work really hard, come to our English classes. Missionaries would have English classes and work hard and learn it and be able to be baptized. And then after a year, maybe go on a mission and come back. And there's guys that can go get way better jobs than they ever would have been able to with their level of formal education and the opportunities they really had, because the church at this time is only in English in India. And so that's really been a blessing to a lot of members of the church in India, because it's allowed them to go work for Dell or for Microsoft or whoever they can go get a job for.
What was one of the craziest foods you had in India?
Had to drink a shot of cow urine one time because there was a Brahmin who had it as a sacred substance and he wanted us to, and we did it to be polite.
What was one of the crazy or dangerous experiences you had?
I guess just getting arrested and being in an Indian prison seemed pretty crazy.
What was one of the most spiritual experiences you had, or a time you felt the Spirit strongly?
There was one time that we had a member of the church give a blessing to his niece while we were there participating in the blessing as well. It's the first blessing he'd given, and she came out of her 103 fever 1 minute afterwards, and she'd been in fever for 3 days before that.
What was one of the greatest life lessons you learned?
I just think hard work.
What was a new skill or ability you gained as a missionary?
Oh, all sorts. Just the ability to just eat anything and not be grossed out by it.
Most extreme weather?
Monsoon season would happen every year there, and we'd be waiting like up to here to go proselytizing, and they have open sewers along the sides of the road in India, so some of that water was open sewers.
What was one of the hardest things you went through?
It was just getting transferred sometimes when I had a lot going on. We were really close with a lot of families, and getting transferred maybe before baptisms had happened. I think those were the hardest things.
Best advice you could give to a missionary heading out to India?
It's going to be different, and just love it and be positive about it. And if you're OCD, you just got to let it go for a couple years.
Best advice you could give to a returned missionary just heading home? Or just getting home?
Just don't go back to how you were before your mission, and keep trying to serve people and love people. I know the church is true. I know that the gospel of Jesus Christ especially is true, and that it blesses people's lives. I've seen it change people's lives. People who really lived in degrees of darkness for years in their lives, I saw just completely come out of that because of the gospel. And the people of India love our Heavenly Father, even though they don't always know Him. And I think that as you go to India, you'll come to love those people, and you'll know that the message you're bringing them is only going to help them, and help them to become happier, better versions of themselves. And it'll be a great blessing in your life. The people there will love you. They'll be grateful for your service. And I know that's true, and I can say it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.